Why? Huska Halt, and Chai Isquis Jim Elwood. Hello, my name is Jim Elwood, and I'm an artist and educator with School District 23 and here at the Kelowna Art Gallery. And I'm proud to live on the beautiful, unceded traditional territory of the Syilx Okanagan people, where these lessons have been created and this exhibit exists. So while I was working on these lessons, right from the beginning, I worked with WFN elders and cultural leaders. So before I even took the project on, we sat down and we worked together, and is this something that is needed and wanted? And then through the entire process, I met with those same elders and cultural leaders until we got to that final draft, and we laid the whole thing out, and it was gone over and looked at and shared with our community. Dreamcatchers, our first lesson, kindergarten, and it gives me a chance to introduce you to how these lessons are structured. They're in ebook form, and they have websites and cultural backgrounds to each lesson. And that's the most important thing with these lessons. Yes, they're interesting and exciting and great lessons for the students to do, but the culture leads the way. I would term it culture forward. So the Dreamcatchers originate with the Ojibwe Anishinaabe people, and it goes to the story of Spider Woman, where she protected all the children within her nation, but the nation got so large that she couldn't protect them anymore on her own. So she created dream catchers to be hung by the beds of each child. And so that's the traditional story that's important, that goes back to this. This is our grade 1 lesson, and it's important to ground our students early on with the Syilx Okanagan traditions. And pictographs date back from hundreds of years to thousands of years. And they are one of the most sacred art forms for the Syilx Okanagan people. So for our young students to learn that as their grounding in early education is so important. The art form itself is simplified form, so it fits this age group very, very well. And this is our grade 2 lesson. It's based on the Inuit artist Kennewick Ashevek, who is kind of ground zero for that moving of 3D imagery into 2D imagery in Canadian history. And Kennewick Ashevek is one of the most important artists in Canadian history. I have to admit to you that this is my favorite lesson out of the 10. You look at the colors and the designs here, just love these pieces. This is our grade 3 lesson, the Coast Salish Feathers, and it's a fascinating story of the Coast Salish art form almost disappearing and the rebirth of it in the late 80s and 90s. So we've taken those forms with this lesson. We've got the circles, we've got the crescents and the trigons, and the students at this age use templates, and they're able to move them around and play with those templates in the feather shape to start with, and then they create the art form. Now, the feathers themselves look great, but when you're able to display them as a whole, it makes a much more complete and a wonderful exhibit. For Syilx Okanagan for Food Chiefs, which is one of the most important stories, understandings that the Syilx Okanagan people have. And it's great to introduce it at such an early age and in a visual form where the students can interact with it. So it hits them more emotionally and intellectually at an early age. As well as the story of the 4 food chiefs and how food was given, it gives a chance to learn that early language. So we've got the bear, Skim Heast, we've got Spitlam, and we've got Titir, and Sia, the Saskatoon. This is the grade 5 lesson, the medicine wheel. And the medicine wheel, like Dreamcatchers, is across many, many nations. And what happens with this lesson is students will learn about the different zones of the medicine wheel. We've got the spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional areas. And they look at colors and ideas and things that represent those areas. And then they take those ideas and what represents them. So it's like a mini self-portrait for this age group. And we end up with a huge variety of work and colors. And I just kind of fall in love with all of these images that the students have done. This is our grade 6 lesson, Nahacha'it. It's also known by its, as Elder Barnes would say, its tourist name, Ogopogo. And what I love about this lesson is it's a chance to take something that is so familiar to students and the broader community in the Okanagan, the Ogopogo, and take that understanding and connect to it the Indigenous, the Silk's understanding of Nahaha'ik, which is the spirit of the lake. It's more of a philosophy and idea of how we respect nature and we respect the water and all those things that go with it. This is our grade 7 lesson, the creation stories, looking at Indigenous creation stories from across North America. And one of the great things with this is it allows students to connect to sometimes their own nations. Here in the Okanagan, we've got students from many, many nations. And so we honor those stories. But the great thing is when the stories are being built and when they're finished in this visual form, it gives students a chance to look at the connectivity between all of the lesson. What is the same? And that's a great message. This is our grade 8 Modern Northwest Coast. I'd like to start with the modern Northwest Coast. The Northwest Coast designs are very, very complicated and very difficult to work with. But if you look at the traditions of Robert Davidson and Francis Dick, they've zoomed in, they've closed in and worked on more of the shapes themselves. So it's a good chance for our students to understand the tradition behind them and the stories behind them, but also get a little more in depth and a little better understanding of the visual forms. This is our grade 9 lesson, the Woodland style, and as it's the last lesson in the set of 10, it's nice to look back and see the lessons as they progress, as the students progress. In 10 short years, they go from the basics of kindergarten and grade 1 to incredible work that this is. So the Woodland style is out of southern Manitoba and Northwest Ontario, and I've chosen to teach that lesson through Norvell Morisseau and Daphne Ojig. And that great part of that story is Daphne Ojig connects here to the Okanagan so beautifully. So the work is two-dimensional, beautiful outlining, great design, patterning, incredible use of color that these students have done. But the main part, again, with a lot of the Indigenous lessons is that storytelling. Each one of these may be a beautiful, colorful work of art, but there's a story behind them. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of those partners that helped create this lesson, these lessons, and this exhibit. From my school district partners and the support that I received at my school, Mount Bushry Secondary, and the district at large. And then with WFN, my partners at the Thenshwipps Heritage Museum and West Bank First Nations Council. As well, the partnership here at the Kelowna Art Gallery. They've been so supportive and have brought these lessons and student examples out from the classrooms and into the public.